Behold, the sower went forth to sow. And when he sowed, some seeds fell by the wayside, and the fowls came and devoured them up. Some fell upon stony places, where they had not much earth, and forthwith they sprung up, because they had no deepness of earth. And when the sun was up, they were scorched, and because they had no root, they withered away. And some fell among thorns, and the thorns sprung up and choked them. But other fell into good ground, and brought forth fruit. Some 100-fold, some 60-fold, some 30-fold. Who hath ears to hear, let him hear.
Why speakest thou unto them in parables?
Because it is given unto you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven. But to them it is not given. For whosoever hath, to him shall be given, and he shall have more abundance. But whosoever hath not, from him shall be taken away, even that he hath. Therefore I speak to them in parables. Because they seeing see not, and hearing they hear not, neither do they understand. And in them is fulfilled the prophecy of Esaias, which saith, By hearing ye shall hear, ye shall not understand. And seeing ye shall see, and shall not perceive. For this people's heart is waxed gross, and their ears are dull of hearing, and their eyes they have closed, lest at any time they should see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and should understand with their hearts, and should be converted, and I should heal them. Blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. For verily I say unto you that many prophets and righteous men have desired to see those things which ye see, and have not seen them, and to hear those things which ye hear, and have not heard them. Hear ye therefore the parable of the sower. When anyone heareth the word of the kingdom, and understandeth it not, then cometh the wicked one, and catcheth away that which was sown in his heart. This is he which receives seed by the wayside. But he that received the seed into stony places, the same is he that heareth the word, and anon with joy receiveth it. Yet hath he not root in himself, but dureth for a while. For when tribulation or persecution ariseth because of the word, by and by he is offended. He also that receives seed among the thorns is he that heareth the word, and the care of this world and deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and he becometh unfruitful. But he that receives seed into the good ground is he that heareth the word and understandeth it, which also beareth fruit, and bringeth forth some 100-fold, some 60, some 30.
Matthew chapter 13. That same day Jesus went out of the house and sat beside the sea, and great crowds gathered about him, so that he got into a boat and sat down, and the whole crowd stood on the beach. And he told them many things in parables, saying, A sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some seeds fell along the path, and the birds came and devoured them. Other seeds fell on rocky ground, where they did not have much soil, and immediately they sprang up, since they had no depth of soil. But when the sun rose, they were scorched, and since they had no root, they withered away. Other seeds fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them. Other seeds fell on good soil and produced grain, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. He who has ears, let him hear. Then the disciples came and said to him, Why do you speak to them in parables? And he answered them, To you it has been given to know the secrets of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it has not been given. For to the one who has, more will be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. This is why I speak to them in parables, because seeing they do not see, and hearing they do not hear, nor do they understand. Indeed, in their case, the prophecy of Isaiah is fulfilled that says, You will indeed hear, but never understand, and you will indeed see, but never perceive. For this people's heart has grown dull, and with their ears they can barely hear, and their eyes they have closed, lest they should see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and understand with their heart, and turn, and I would heal them. But blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. For truly I say to you, many prophets and righteous people longed to see what you see, and did not see it, and to hear what you hear, and did not hear it. Hear then the parable of the sower. When anyone hears the word of the kingdom, and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what has been sown in his heart. This is what was sown along the path. For as what was sown on rocky ground, this is the one who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy. Yet he has no root in himself, but endures for a while. And when tribulation or persecution arises on account of the word, immediately he falls away. As for what was sown among thorns, this is the one who hears the word, but the cares of the world and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and it proves unfruitful. As for what was sown on good soil, this is the one who hears the word and understands it. He indeed bears fruit, and yields in one case 100-fold, in another 60, and in another 30. Verse 24. He put another parable before them, saying, The kingdom of heaven may be compared to a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while his men were sleeping, his enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat, and went away. So when the plants came up and bore grain, then the weeds appeared also. And the servants of the master of the house came and said to him, Master, did you not sow good seed in your field? How then does it have weeds? He said to them, An enemy has done this. So the servants said to him, Then do you want us to go and gather them? But he said, No, lest in gathering the weeds you root up the wheat along with them. Let both grow together until the harvest. And at the harvest time I will tell the reapers, Gather the weeds first, and bind them in bundles to be burned, but gather the wheat into my barn. Verse 31. He put another parable before them, saying, The kingdom of heaven is like a grain of mustard seed, that a man took and sowed in his field. It is the smallest of all seeds, but when it has grown, it is larger than all the garden plants, and becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air come and make nests in its branches. He told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like leaven, that a woman took and hid in 3 measures of flour, till it was all leavened. Verse 34. All these things Jesus said to the crowds in parables. Indeed, he said nothing to them without a parable. This was to fulfill what was spoken by the prophets. I will open my mouth in parables. I will utter what has been hidden since the foundation of the world. Then he left the crowds and went into the house, and his disciples came to him, saying, Explain to us the parable of the weeds of the field. He answered, The one who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world, and the good seed is the sons of the kingdom. The weeds are the sons of the evil one, and the enemy who sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are angels. Just as the weeds are gathered and burned with fire, so will it be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send his angels, and they will gather out of his kingdom all causes of sin and all lawbreakers, and throw them into the fiery furnace. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. He who has ears, let him hear. The kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field, which a man found and covered up. Then in his joy he goes and sells all that he has and buys that field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of fine pearls, who, finding one pearl of great value, went and sold all that he had and bought it. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a net that was thrown into the sea and gathered fish of every kind. When it was full, men drew it ashore and sat down and sorted the good into containers, but threw away the bad. So it will be at the end of the age. The angels will come out and separate the evil from the righteous and throw them into the fiery furnace. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Have you understood all these things? They said to him, Yes. And he said to them, Therefore every scribe who has been trained for the kingdom of heaven is like a master of a house, who brings out of his treasure what is new and what is old. Verse 53. And when Jesus had finished these parables, he went away from there, and coming to his hometown, he taught them in their synagogue, so that they were astonished, and said, Where did this man get this wisdom and these mighty works? Is not this the carpenter's son? Is not his mother called Mary? And are not his brothers James and Joseph and Simon and Judas? And are not all his sisters with us? Where then did this man get all these things? And they took offense at him. But Jesus said to them, A prophet is not without honor except in his hometown and in his own household. And he did not do many mighty works there because of their unbelief. Chapter 13, we have a chapter filled with parables. Parables are short earthly stories with heavenly meanings. Jesus is the master teacher. And here is a crowd so great that Jesus has to get into a boat in order for everyone to see and hear him. And with that great crowd, Jesus tells parables that are difficult to understand without an interpretation. And that's what happens, we see later, Jesus interpreting the parables to his disciples. Jesus tells the parable of the sower beginning in verse 3. This is where the seed falls on the different kinds of ground. Some ground that's rocky and not much soil, some that's no depth of soil, some that's been scorched by the sun and withered. Some seeds fell among thorns, and the thorns choked the plant. And then some fell among good soil and produced grain, and that grain produced some 100 times, some 60, some 30. At the end of the parable here, Jesus says, verse 9, He who has ears, let him hear. And that's it. That's the end of the teaching. That's all Jesus says about that. It's a very strange story when left right here. But then Jesus ends by telling the people they need to pay attention to what he just said. Then the disciples said, Why do you speak to them in parables? Why do you do this? Jesus has good reason for doing this. He tells them that, well, his disciples have an understanding that the crowds do not have, and has been given to them to know the secrets of the kingdom of heaven. They have, and more will be given to them. Now, why does Jesus do this? What does he mean here? Well, I think we can better understand what Jesus is saying after we look at the rest of Jesus' answer. Because seeing they do not see, and hearing they do not hear. What does he mean by that? This is something that happens almost every day in our house. I will go to the refrigerator or the pantry looking for something, and I can't find it. And I'll tell Tammy, I can't find it. It's not here. We don't have any of this. And she says, it's right there. It's right there in front of you. And I'm looking, but I don't see it. And then she'll come and look and immediately grab it and hand it to me. Well, I wasn't looking that hard. If I really wanted to look hard, I would have started moving stuff around. But I expect to just open it and it just, announce itself to me, I guess. In short, I was being lazy, right? I was not looking carefully enough. And that's what Jesus is saying about the people. They all look like they're looking, but they're not really looking. They all look like they're hearing, but they're not really hearing. They think they can understand, but they're not really trying to understand. So Jesus is going to prove what he says here in verse 14 by quoting the prophet Isaiah. Isaiah said this about 700 years earlier, and said the same thing that Jesus says: hear but not understand, see but not perceive. Isaiah, as we've been studying in our Wednesday night Bible class, has been talking about the people in his own day and time, about the fact that they don't see and understand the things that are there being told. But Jesus uses this to show that nothing has changed. The people's hearts are still not engaged. They're still acting the same way. Why? Because their hearts have become dull. They had hard hearts. Their ears hard to hear. They've closed their eyes. It seems there's no willpower here to have an open mind and an open heart and open eyes. They have their own preconceived notions and ideas, and they don't want to hear anything else or nothing that would to take away from those preconceived ideas and notions. In short, Jesus is seeking people who will look deeper, who will try to understand, who will open up those eyes and ears and hearts. Jesus is not going to dumb it down for the crowds. He's doing the opposite. Jesus is telling God's truths in such a way that he'll see who is going to be dismissive of it and just say, whatever, and who will try to understand. And that's important. Are we people who will be just dismissive whenever we hear the truth? Or are we going to seek to learn it deeper, to understand its meaning, to try to find what Jesus is saying? Are we dull of hearing, or do we have our ears open? Jesus then, beginning in verse 18, explains the parable to his disciples, the ones who really will try to hear and understand. And he talks about the fact that the seed cast on rocky ground, there's not much soil. This is one who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy. And that seems like everything is going well. They hear it, they respond to the message joyfully. Everything's great. But then something happens. The plant doesn't sprout roots because the ground is rocky. There's not room for the roots. So they only endure for a short time. Well, why? Why is that the case? Well, Jesus tells us two reasons. One or the other or both, right? They encounter suffering or trials. They're experiencing persecutions, and then it's not worth it to me to go through all these difficulties for God. So I'm out. So when life gets difficult, they leave their devotion to the Lord. So why does that happen? Why is it that there are some that leave the Lord when life gets hard? Notice here the problem is that they don't have a good root system. No plant can endure without a strong root system. The fact that you're watching these daily Bible reading videos says you're trying to deepen your root system. You're trying to grow and expand your faith and knowledge. And that shows that you are interested in not being that rocky soil. But there are those that are disinterested in doing that. Their Bible is never read. They never try to grow deeper with their relationship with our Lord. And so when times get rough, they don't have a solid foundation to keep them in the ground. They'll just fall over like an old tree in the wind. And then verse 22, there's the thorny ground. This is the person who they hear the word, but the cares, the worries of life, the idea of wealth, all those things are more of a priority in their lives than following the Lord. So the power of the world seems to nullify this person's faith. They're too worried about worldly things. It doesn't mean these things are wrong. These aren't necessarily sinful things. Maybe when you get to the deceitfulness of riches, there could be sin there. But the cares of this world, we all have cares in this world. We all do have things that we care about in this world. Sometimes, though, we care too much. We care too much about our stuff, about this world, about the affairs of this world and our country. I know of those who, that's all they can think about is what a terrible condition our country is in and how awful that is, and they let that consume them without thinking, I'm glad I'm a Christian. I'm glad I'm with the Lord because I can go through all things because of Him and who strengthens me. And so they listen to the news more than they listen to God. Do you find yourself doing that? Listening to the news more than you listen to God and His Word? When we do that, we spend more time worrying about this world than our own spiritual growth, and then we get choked out. Then verse 23, there's the good soil. This person who hears the word understands it. They try to grow deep in their knowledge and in their faith. They look to understand. And what I love about this is the 160 and 30-fold. That means that not everybody has that same depth of soil. The soil's good. This is a good person. Some Christians are able to expand their faith further than others, but it's all good. It's all good. So I don't need to look at a 100-fold Christian, someone who's really at it. I mean, you can just see that they have a depth of relationship with God. And you're like, well, I'll never have that kind of relationship. Well, you're just in a different place right now than they are. It doesn't mean that you'll never get to 100-fold, but you shouldn't stress about that. Some people are 100-fold Christians. Some are 60, some are 30. But that's all good soil. We can't compare ourselves to each other and say, well, I might as well just give up trying because I'll never be the kind of Christian that brother is or that sister is. Don't do that. It's not a competition. At the end, there's no trophy for first place Christian. I'll save the parable of the weeds here in verse 24 for when we get to the Gospel of Mark. The mustard seed parable, we'll save that when we get into Luke. I do want to end with verses 44 through 46 here. These are these parables. There's the hidden treasure. The man finds it, sells all that he has to buy the field, or the pearl of great price, sells all that he has to find that pearl. On the surface, we think, well, that's kind of crazy to give up everything for this one thing. Isn't this sort of materialistic? That's not the point. The point is, Jesus is seeking those who find Him of more value than anything else in this world. Jesus is seeking those who find their relationship with Him to be more valuable than anything else on this world. What do you treasure? Do you treasure a relationship with God? Or do you find it not worth what you have here on this world? What we have here is so limited. Our time is so limited, but eternity is forever. Nothing in this life can keep us from having Jesus. I want to say that again. Nothing in this life can keep us from having Jesus. Is that true in your life? If not, make that true. Love to help you in any way possible. Let us know. Thank you so much. We'll see you tomorrow.